You know, it's really easy once you get elected and come to Washington, D.C., to put it in cruise control and just go along with the status quo. But that's not why I ran for Congress, and that's not why I came to Washington, D.C. As a matter of fact, I was one of the Americans in 2016 that looked at a presidential stage of 17 Republican candidates, and the only one that stood out to me was Donald John Trump, the very man that stood out and represented Republican voters and Americans all over the country that were sick and tired of a Republican establishment failing us over and over again. That's why I supported him in 2016. That's why I supported him in 2020. And that's why I support him now. But what happened when President Trump became president and the Republican majority in the House and the Republican majority in the Senate is the Republican establishment under Paul Ryan failed President Trump and failed the agenda that we wanted to get done. They passed a $1.3 trillion omnibus that did not fund the wall after we had stood at Trump rally after Trump rally and said, build the wall. They failed us. They funded the uniparty agenda. They funded the status quo that Washington, D.C. just wants to keep going and keep going. And you know what happened? That's why Republicans lost the midterms in 2018 and Nancy Pelosi became speaker. Republicans didn't fight. They allowed the Russia hoax. And then what happened when Democrats took over the House? It was impeachment number one, and the entire war against President Trump continued. And that war on President Trump is the war on the same voters today that are ready to go and vote for that man in November and put him in the White House in January. And that's exactly what is happening. He's winning poll after poll after poll because he's the only one fighting while Republicans in the House and Republicans in Washington continue to cave and be part of the uniparty. Mitch McConnell has a 6% approval rating for a reason. And that's because he's caved to the Democrats and continued the disgusting business model in Washington, D.C. that thrives on forever wars and thrives on building a bigger government and taking away the freedoms bit by bit of Americans. Republican voters in America, Americans altogether, gave Republicans the House. They gave us the House in 2022. You want to know why? Because they were fed up with the Democrat agenda that is destroying this country. Wide open borders, an economy that's crashing, freedoms being stolen, COVID shutdowns, all the horrors that happened when Joe Biden took the White House and Democrats took full control. That's why we won the House in 2022. But what have we done with it? What are we giving Republican voters to vote for? President Trump is the reason why people are going to turn out in November. And I'm here fighting every single day to push my party to be a Republican-controlled majority that will fight and pass his agenda when he's in the White House in January. And right now, we are not that Republican majority. We have a speaker, Mike Johnson, that by the way, I elected him. I voted for that man. So I have every right to be standing here. It wasn't a choice of America. It was a choice within our Republican conference. And I voted for Mike Johnson because his voting record before he became speaker was conservative. He voted against funding Ukraine. He was solidly pro-life. He voted to secure the border. He voted to fight against Democrats, fight against the witch hunt against President Trump. But once he became speaker, he has become a man that none of us recognize. He passed 3 continuing resolutions. And then he finally passed a 2-part omnibus that fully funded Joe Biden's agenda and the Democrat agenda, funded the Department of Justice that wants to put President Trump in jail for the rest of his life, which is a death sentence. Mike Johnson fully funded the FBI, which raided Mar-a-Lago, and he gave him a brand new building as a gift. Pro-life Mike Johnson funded full-term abortion clinics, funded the trans agenda on children that 70% of Americans are completely against on both sides of the aisle. And he fully funded Joe Biden's open border policies, the number one issue in America. So I entered a motion to vacate, but I didn't call it for a vote. I was controlled. I was responsible. I was being conscious and caring about my conference and our majority. It was a warning to stop serving the Democrats and support our Republican conference and support our agenda. And he didn't do it. And we all went home. And Republican voters everywhere, Americans were raging at Mike Johnson. And he doubled down. He didn't change course. He continued. And when we came back, he reauthorized FISA. And he was the deciding vote himself to stop the warrant requirement of FISA. He voted it down. When only 6 months before that, before Speaker, he was for it. That was the second betrayal. And then we all went home and America raged, and I was still responsible. I was still patient, and I was still being careful with our Republican majority. And then we came back. And that's when Mike Johnson fully joined the disgusting business model of Washington, D.C. to fund forever wars. Yeah, that's what this is. The Uniparty is Make Ukraine Great Again. The Uniparty is all about funding every single foreign war. They think this is the business model that needs to be done. Here you go. Set that up there. Let's do these guys up. Yeah, thank you. Americans do not want to send their hard-earned tax dollars to fund the murder and killing in foreign countries. They're fed up with it. And they're screaming it as loud as they possibly can. Our economy should not be built on the blood of wars in foreign countries. That's not what our economy should be built on. That's not how you grow jobs in America. That is horrific. It is evil and needs to end. But that's what the Uniparty does, and that's what they continue. Mike Johnson fully embraced it, and he funded $61 more billion to Ukraine. Funded a war in Israel while he funded Hamas in Gaza. How do you support Israel when you're funding Hamas? And gave more money away while our border stays open. And today, 300 Americans will die from fentanyl. Tomorrow, 300 Americans will die from fentanyl. And the next day, 300 more Americans will die from fentanyl poisoning because there's a war on America led by the cartels in Mexico. And nobody in Washington, D.C. gives a damn and has enough courage to face it. And Americans are sick of it. Sick and tired and fed up. And you want to know something? Nobody wants to rock the boat in Washington, D.C. Oh, no. That would be uncomfortable, Marjorie. We don't want to face the issues, Marjorie. Let's just wait and get through the election, Marjorie. Let's just assume President Trump is going to win, and we'll fix it next Congress, Marjorie. Well, I'm sorry. How many more Americans have to die? How many more dead American bodies have to pile up before the House of Representatives that's paid for by Americans' tax dollars actually does something about it? I want to know when this town is going to give a damn about Americans. And that's what this is really about. Well, there's one thing I know. If we get President Trump back in the White House in January of 2025, and we are lucky enough to earn the trust again from voters in America to have a Republican majority in this House of Representatives, that we have a job to do. We cannot let people down again. We cannot fail President Trump. And this cannot happen. The MAGA agenda that I believe in, the Make America Great Again agenda that I support and Americans support, and the whole reason why Republicans are going to turn out and vote in November because they support President Trump, we need leaders in the House of Representatives that are going to get this done. not working for Hakeem Jeffries, not working for Joe Biden, and not going to be twisted and lulled into keep continuing the disgusting practices of Washington, D.C. Mike Johnson is not capable of that job. He has proven it over and over again. Now we have Hakeem Jeffries and the Democrats coming out, embracing Mike Johnson with a warm hug and a big, wet, sloppy kiss. And they are ready to, they have endorsed him. They are ready to support him as speaker. They want to keep it going, keep the band together. Why? Because Mike Johnson is giving them everything they want. Everything they want. Every single thing they want. So it's really interesting to me. Hakeem Jeffries has gone through round after round of speaker votes, and we've all witnessed it, haven't we, America? And I want to tell you, I think it's good that America witnessed all of that. And the Democrats said his name over and over again. They said Hakeem Jeffries because they wanted to elect him speaker. Well, I find it very satisfying that they are ready to vote for Mike Johnson. And you want to know something? I want to see it happen. And I also want to see recorded votes. I think the American people, by the way, who I represent, I think the American people need to see a recorded vote of does Congress, does members of Congress support the uniparty? Is this what they support? I think every member of Congress needs to take that vote and let the chips fall where they may. And so next week, I am going to be calling this motion to vacate. Absolutely calling it. I can't wait to see Democrats go out and support a Republican speaker and have to go home to their primaries and have to run for Congress again, having supported a Republican speaker, a Christian conservative. I think that'll play well. I'm excited about it. And I also can't wait to see my Republican conference show their cards and show who we are, because voters deserve it. Is the Republican Party, have they finally learned their lesson? Have they finally heard the message from voters back at home? Are they willing to actually fight? Or are they going to just keep going along to get along? Because it's really easy to do that in Washington, D.C. I'm going to tell you, at over $34 trillion in debt, with millions and millions of people invading our country, an economy that I don't even know how is staying afloat, because every business owner I know has been suffering, and people fed up with the drama on television and fed up with the fighting and fed up with the bullshit from Washington, D.C., are ready for a Republican majority that's ready to support President Trump and his agenda in January of 2025. And I'm happy to deliver that vote for everyone next week. And at this time, I'd like to turn it over to my good friend and ally here, Thomas Massie, and he'll explain his thoughts on this. Thank you.
Well, it's an honor to be here today with one of the hardest fighting, most articulate members of our Republican conference. I think she's gone about this in a very reasonable way. She's given the speaker multiple chances to resign, to leave. And instead, he's clinging to power by clinging to Democrats. What are the three betrayals that he's delivered to our party and to the country? Well, the first betrayal was the omnibus bill. You know, under Kevin McCarthy, we did 7 separate spending bills. And then when Mike Johnson took over, did we start working on the other 5? No. We threw the 7 in the trash. All the hard work that we had done, Mike Johnson disposed of and decided to do an omnibus bill. An omnibus bill that spends more than Nancy Pelosi's omnibus bill. An omnibus bill that builds the FBI a brand new building. Meanwhile, we're over here in our Judiciary Committee, asking them for answers. They mock us. They thumb their noses at us. And why shouldn't they? If we're going to build them a new building and send them strongly worded letters as if we're going to do something about their insolence. The second betrayal of Mike Johnson was FISA, passing FISA without warrants. Did he do this? Did he do this in the proper way? No. The authority for the FISA 702 program rests with the Judiciary Committee. But Mike Johnson decided to let the Intel Committee run this program. And then when it came, we fought hard in the Rules Committee. We fought hard in Judiciary. We got a vote on the floor on warrants whether you should have to have a warrant to spy on Americans. I mean, this is a constitutionally redundant vote. It should be obvious to anybody that's read the Constitution that you need warrants. And you can say, well, poor Mike Johnson, he's got such a slim majority. You can't get everything you want, Marjorie Taylor Greene or Thomas Massie. He's got such a slim majority. He was the slim majority that cast the deciding vote that says you can spy on Americans without a warrant. It was 212 to 212. Go look it up. He didn't vote on the other amendments. He went out of his way to vote no on that amendment and was the deciding vote on FISA without warrants. So what was the third betrayal, the third and final betrayal? Nearly $100 billion for foreign wars, and he just put that on the floor. It started out as a veterans bill to give veterans better benefits, H.R. 815. Chuck Schumer stripped every word out of it, put this supplemental in it, and send it back to the House. And then using the Rules Committee that I sat on, what I can't go along with, what they did, they pretended like we voted on 4 separate bills. But then after those votes passed, they changed them to amendments and concurred with the Senate bill and sent it back to the Senate. This whole thing was pre-conference with Chuck Schumer. Why is it that on all 3 betrayals, the Senate didn't change a word of these bills when they went to the Senate from the House? It's because Mike Johnson was doing Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden's bidding. They didn't need to change a word of any of these bills. Chuck Schumer fought against all the amendments. He wanted those bills exactly as Mike Johnson had passed them, exactly as Mike Johnson had promised. FISA without warrants, an omnibus with a new building for the FBI, and $100 billion of foreign aid with no border security in it. As Ms. Green stated, our border is wide open. Wide open. This was our last chance for leverage, and the Speaker gave it all up. Now, why would Hakeem Jeffries endorse a Republican Speaker? Aren't they arch rivals? I mean, what does Hakeem Jeffries want, after all? He wants an open border. He wants increased spending. He wants to take back the majority. And most of all, he and the Democrat conference here want President Trump to lose. Who do they think can deliver on all 4 of those things? Mike Johnson will deliver these things for them. Increased spending, open borders, a loss of our majority, and a loss for President Trump. Because this is so demotivating here. We sat here and watched total capitulation with the Democrats waving flags that was premeditated of another country, not the American flag. You know, Mike Johnson should have brought the white flag and waved it in front of us. Because it was a complete capitulation. It was a humiliation, not just to us, but to all the American people who pay their tax dollars only to see them go overseas, fund foreign wars, secure other countries' borders without securing our borders. I'm going to challenge my colleagues to think about it this weekend because, as Marjorie Taylor Greene said, we're coming back and we're voting on this next week.
That's right.
And you get to have the choice if you're a Republican. Are you going to embrace Hakeem Jeffries like Mike Johnson has? Are you going to embrace the uniparty like Mike Johnson has when you come back next week? Or are you going to fight for Americans who gave us the majority? And you may say, oh, well, this is lovely bipartisanship. Look, you've got Hakeem Jeffries hugging Speaker Mike Johnson and helping him keep his majority or keep his seat. But the reality is this isn't policy. This isn't like some criminal justice reform where the left and the right can agree. This is about who holds that gavel. Right now, they are both holding that gavel. They are sharing power about procedures, about what bills will come to the floor, about how long we will debate those bills and which committees are comprised of which members. They are sharing power. Now, you may say, and I'll close with this, Congressman Massie, Hakeem Jeffries just told you he's going to save Mike Johnson's bacon. So why go through with this? It's a futile exercise. Why would you go through with this? Look, we didn't get elected to make excuses. We didn't get elected to say we shouldn't even try. We got elected to come here and give it our best, and also to impose transparency. What we've seen here is the coming out of the uniparty. and it will be consolidated, and it will be transparent and apparent next week to all Americans when this vote happens. Too many of our colleagues have thrown up their hands in frustration and apathy. Oh, we shouldn't even try. Let's just coast this one out. I tell you what, it's too dangerous to coast this one out. We cannot coast this one out. Hakeem Jeffries knows if we coast this one out, we lose the majority.
That's right.
Spending goes up next fall. He knows the border will stay open, and he knows this is going to demotivate our voters because we've given up. Why should they try?
That's right.
So we are not going to give up. We will fight the uniparty, and we will have this vote next week, and I look forward to it. And I've got one last challenge. I challenge members of my own conference to think long and hard about whether they want to join the uniparty next week. But we have a leadership team, a team of leaders, from conference chair to whip to majority leader. Why do we have a team? We have a team so that when one of them goes off the rails, the others of them can meet with them and say, you are no longer suited for this job. So I challenge the whip, the majority leader, the conference chair, the policy chair, everybody in our conference to sit down with Mike Johnson and have that talk and tell him, it's not worth it, Mike. It's not worth it to share power with Hakeem Jeffries just for the vanity of you keeping the title of speaker. It doesn't serve our country. It doesn't serve our conference. They need to ask him to resign. That is what they should do. And I challenge them to have that tough discussion. With that, we'll take questions.
It's a privilege. Congressman, it's a privilege.
If this vote fails next week, as is expected, will you continue to try to force a vote on this issue? And two, former President Trump has said positive things about the speaker and has said he doesn't favor a motion to vacate. Aren't you defying former president's wishes?
Absolutely not. I'm the biggest supporter of President Trump, and that's why I proudly wear this MAGA hat. I fight for his agenda every single day. And that's why I'm fighting here against my own Republican conference to fight harder against the Democrats. Mike Johnson has fully funded the Department of Justice that wants to put President Trump in jail, giving him a death sentence. He fully funded the FBI that raided Mar-a-Lago and gave them a brand new building. He fully funded Biden's wide open border. I know everybody knows, the American people know, and every voter that's ready to line up and vote for President Trump in November knows between me and Mike Johnson who's supporting President Trump and his agenda. And that is absolutely me, number one. If this vote fails and the whole conference, the whole Congress supports the uniparty, let me tell you something. That is not a failure. It's a win for the American people because that's a list of names. And the voters and the American people who pay for everywhere, we're standing on ground they pay for. They pay for that building. They deserve that list. I believe in recorded votes. That is our job. Our job is to vote. And if anyone is scared of where they're going to vote on a motion to table or if it goes further, then they don't belong here in Washington. They have to be ready to do the hard job.
Why move forward with this then in defiance of former President Trump, and why next week and not today then?
We have to have a Republican majority in January, and under Mike Johnson's leadership, we're not going to have one because Republican voters, just like Thomas Massie just said, Hakeem Jeffries is endorsing Mike Johnson because he knows Mike Johnson's leadership is going to hand the House majority to the Democrats in January. It will make our voters not want to vote for him. They're going to turn out and vote for President Trump top of the ticket, and then they're going to skip Republican House members because they're disgusted with Mike Johnson, his leadership, his speakership in the uniparty. That's exactly why we have to do this. We have to win in November. We have to have a majority in the House. You want to know why? All you people, your taxes are going to go up if the Democrats control the House. That's right. The whole tax cut, President Trump's tax cuts and savings plan, guess what? It expires this year. And whoever controls the House of Representatives, if it's Mike Johnson and Hakeem Jeffries holding hands together, your taxes are going up, ladies and gentlemen. And you want to know what else? Your money is going to be funding Ukraine because they already want more money for Ukraine. They're demanding it already. That check cleared, and it wasn't even a week. And they said Ukraine's going to need more money by the end of the summer. And that's what's going to continue. Americans don't want it. Yes, sir.
Congresswoman.
Next week and not today.
Everybody needs the weekend to prepare. I'm not irresponsible. I care about my conference. I have been measured. I have given this time. I have given warning after warning after warning. And that's why we don't have to rush. We can do it next week.
Also, I think this is a somber decision for Mike Johnson. He deserves a weekend to think about it. He should resign because he knows what's coming next week. What's coming is his sharing of power with Hakeem Jeffries. Now, I'm actually not going to concede that the vote will fail. I mean, I think Hakeem had to step out in front and get in front of this freight train because he was afraid he didn't have enough Democrats who would save Mike Johnson. I don't think it's something he wanted to do because now it's going to happen. He is going to embrace Mike Johnson. And the question is, will there be enough Democrats to overcome the Republicans?
The one phrase I hear over and over again is keep fighting, keep fighting. That is complete surrender, doing nothing for our border, but securing the border of foreign countries and continuing to fund the slaughter and the battlefields and the bombs and the horrific injuries and wiping out a full generation of Ukrainian men that will leave women as widows, children as orphans. I'm sorry, the American people don't want to pay for that. If that's what Mike Johnson is for. That we have people. Yeah, go ahead.
So that charge is leveled from Mike Johnson against Marjorie Taylor Greene. You're saying that he said she's not a serious lawmaker. Is that right?
In an interview last night.
Okay, in an interview last night. She's the most serious representative up here. If you listen to the speech that she just gave, she captured exactly what Republicans back home are thinking. They are tired of this swamp. And what does it mean to the Speaker Mike Johnson to be a serious lawmaker? Well, I think it means something different now than it meant 6 months ago or a year ago when he was a rank and file member. Because now to him, being a serious lawmaker means betraying our conference. It means going with the majority of the Democrats and abandoning a majority of Republicans. I don't think that's a serious speaker. I also don't think it's a serious constitutionalist to cast the deciding vote on whether you need a warrant to spy on Americans and getting rid of the warrant provision. So I think he needs to look in a mirror before he criticizes Miss Marjorie Taylor Greene.
To be clear, are you making it privileged?
Yes, sir.
Given the speaker's capitulation recently, ramming through Joe Biden's agenda while betraying constituents, what would the difference? Would there be a difference between Hakeem Jeffries as speaker and Mike Johnson as speaker?
Well, you clearly listen to people more than this town. That's exactly what people are saying everywhere. It's all over the internet and comments. It's being said in coffee shops. It's being said, you go to the town square, that's what people are talking about. They're saying, what is the difference? What is the difference between Mike Johnson and Hakeem Jeffries? People are saying that they see no difference. There is no difference because Mike Johnson is sharing the gavel. They're holding it together. And Mike Johnson is not fighting. He's giving Hakeem Jeffries full power. That's why Hakeem Jeffries has given him the biggest endorsement of his lifetime. And that is the last thing that the American people wanted to see.
By the way, just on that point about sharing power, it wasn't just Hakeem Jeffries who endorsed Mike Johnson. It was their whip,
That's right.
and it was their caucus chair.
That's right.
Their entire leadership team
Yep.
plans on getting a promotion in January thanks to Mike Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
Where is our leadership team? Mm-hmm. They need to be as united as Hakeem's team is, and they need to surround Mike Johnson and say, Mike, it's time to leave.
Congresswoman,
So yesterday,
we called on her first name.
thank you. Congresswoman, last time it took weeks for you all to coalesce around the speaker to even get somebody who wanted to be speaker. So who do you have in mind this time around to prevent Congress from shutting down and not doing its work again?
I'm not naming names, but I think we have people that are capable. Anybody that's willing to fight for our agenda. Anyone that refuses to share the power with Hakeem Jeffries. That's something that we're capable of doing if we decide to do it. This Republican conference can do it. I have watched us do great things. Just as Thomas Massie said, before they ousted Kevin McCarthy, we passed seven separate appropriation bills. We were passing incredible bills that lined up exactly with the reason why people voted for us. And once Mike Johnson took over, he completely stopped it all. We only had 5 left, and he just let them go.
Do you want McCarthy back again?
That's not what I said. I think he's moved on. What our conference is capable of doing is electing someone that is ready and willing to lead. And I have full faith and confidence we can do it. We just have to do it. Yes.
And listen, also, from the very beginning, Mike Johnson has had the chance to save us from what happened in October.
Yeah.
Look, he is a lame duck. He's not going to get reelected in January. He's not going to lead us to any policy wins. He's not going to cut any spending. He is not even going to try. That is why Hakeem wants him to remain a speaker. So what should he do at this point? He should do what John Boehner did. Do you remember when John Boehner left? He gave us notice, and instead of not having a speaker, we allowed him to remain speaker while we did, as an extracurricular activity, elect another speaker. It wasn't like it was in October when we came in. We had to come in every day of every week, and we all had the same meeting, and we couldn't. And that's why we're giving him one more weekend to think about it.
Yesterday, Watley was here kind of making the pitch that doing this so close to an election would not be good for Republicans. Are you worried about kind of what Julie was saying about doing this so close to an election? It took 3 weeks last time, that this could hurt Republicans come November?
Everyone's saying, what's the difference? There is no difference.
Let me take. Carrie.
Okay, just to be sure, I get that you don't want to name names as far as who you're thinking about right now, but the fact of the matter is you had Mike Johnson because Republicans didn't even have a group of names to begin with. So do you have some sort of short list in mind right now? Are you kind of mulling names? Do you have at least a group of people that you're sort of thinking about?
Well, let's be honest. We have Mike Johnson because nobody hated Mike Johnson, okay? There was nothing in his prior life, or political or private, that qualified him for this job. He is a lost ball in tall weeds. He is unequipped to negotiate with Chuck Schumer. and a lot of people have ideas about why he's betrayed us. I think it's just pretty simple. He's over his head.
So no short
And,
list.
and so I would say there are at least a dozen members of our conference who either politically or privately have done things in their life that qualify them to lead. And I'd be willing to consider any of them. And we don't have a list.
What do you say to Republicans who are saying that you guys are playing into the hands of Democrats, that this will cause chaos and disunity, and that they essentially released this statement to provoke you into doing exactly what
that little narrative that you echoed is a lie, and that comes from the Republican establishment that Republican voters are ready to take a sledgehammer to and destroy. They're fed up with it. You want to know why? That's bullshit. It just is. Yes.
A few weeks ago, Congressman Gosar said that he would support the motion to vacate. He's not here today. Do you still have his support?
Oh yeah, absolutely. He just had another thing he had to attend to. Yeah, absolutely.
You've defended this motion to vacate, saying that you're respecting the conference by holding this back. But how do you explain, it took 3 weeks to elect Mike Johnson as Speaker. How do you explain risking another leadership crisis?
I think that's the same question that we've answered about 4 times now. Do you have a different question?
That, by the way, I'll answer this again, even though it's been asked.
Yeah.
This is the time to clean house. Not in October, not in September when he betrays us with another CR.
That's right.
or an increase, another omnibus. Now is the time to clean house. There is time. I mean, we're not even done with primaries yet. People aren't focused right now on their general elections. They're still trying to win their primaries. This is when we should take out the garbage, take out the trash, solve these problems that we have so that we can be a united conference, so that we can have somebody in the speaker's chair who actually has a credible chance of winning speaker in January. Look, Hakeem and his cohorts and colleagues may bail out Mike Johnson next week. That remains to be seen, whether it's a bluff or not. But we know they're not going to vote for him in January. And we know that Mike Johnson can't get a majority of Republicans in January. Even our colleagues who aren't co-sponsors of this have privately admitted there is no way in hell they're going to vote for Mike Johnson to be Speaker in January. And so that's why we need to handle it now, put somebody in that seat who can lead our conference and present a united front to Republicans who are going to go vote in November.
Are either of you considering running for Speaker?
Everybody, we're going to end the press conference. What I'm calling on is, like my colleague here said, Mike Johnson can do some really, he can pray about it, think about it all weekend, do the right thing, and resign, giving our conference time to elect a new leader, a new Speaker of the House. He should reject the endorsement of Hakeem Jeffries and the entire Democrat leadership team. That is not an endorsement that any Republican speaker should ever want or embrace. And this vote will be called next week, and I would just want to urge all our colleagues to prepare for it. It's the right thing to do for America. It's time to clean house and get our conference in order and get ready to support President Trump's agenda. God willing, he wins in November, and we take back full power here in Washington in January. Thank you very much, everyone.
I'm excited to announce we're having a huge MyPillow spring sale.